This room is only 11 by 24 feet, with a layout somewhat smaller, 7 by 11 feet. But what Dick Brown can do in this space! He runs as many as 13 trains, including 2 on the ceiling and 3 in a back room, on 5 different loops. The secret of so much activity in such a confining area are 2 tight figure-8 loops that circle on 4 levels.
The thing developed very slowly over a period of about 4 years, and I started out with with some basic simple loops, and then as I worked with the supports and the track laying and got more proficient at it, then I decided to do the double loop that crossed underneath itself. Once I finished that one, then I came up with the idea of the figure eights, and decided since I had room that I would build 2 of them instead of 1. And, needless to say, I probably spent more time, probably three times as much time on the figure eights as I did the entire rest of the display.
Although he had trains as a boy, his adult interest was not rekindled until 1978, when he bought a train at Christmas for his young son, Tom. He built a small layout in what had formerly been a storage room. Then he moved the layout into its present quarters on top of what was once his ping pong table.
Well, I kept the ping pong table for a long time, and inevitably, as the collection grew, and I wanted to display more of it and show it off more, then eventually the table had to go. The ping pong table had to go, and added as many trains as I possibly could.
Originally, Brown was more interested in the collecting aspects of toy trains than the operating.
And as my collection grew, I really turned into more of a collector than an operator, and that's when I started adding the shelving for display purposes. I shied away from scenery, and I also shied away from accessories, with the idea of displaying as many trains as I possibly could. What we have is an O-gauge layout with Gargrave's track on most of it. The figure 8 loops in the center, I went with the regular Lionel track.
Dick Brown, who runs an earth-moving company, is an engineer, and those skills were employed when he designed the figure 8s on his layout. He started by banking the tracks in the normal manner, towards the inside of the curve, what engineers called super elevation. But he found the tightness of the curves caused the cars to fall off to the inside, so he reversed the bank, creating the proper balance to keep the cars from falling. The loop of track where the orange and black Milwaukee Road F3 is running is banked in the normal way, and this allows Brown to run it at full speed around the curves.
The reason the figure 8s don't work is because they're just too constrained. They're too tight a curve, and if you could, you could do it if you expand. If you made the figure 8s twice as big as they are, then you could go to the super elevation and make it work.
But even with all his expert engineering skills, Dick Brown finds things can still go wrong. Nice catch, Dick.
As you can see today, had quite a few problems, but in general, you know, trying to run 13 trains, I guess, you know, you're going to have some derailments.
For power, Brown uses both 275 ZWs and Type Z Lionel transformers. He prefers the Type Z.
You run 4 trains off of that transformer, and they all have good power at all times, where with the ZW, you turn all 4 of them on and you see a marked reduction in the power getting to the engines.
Dick Brown is a 1956 graduate of the University of Notre Dame and an active alumnus. His walls contain several custom-made stained glass windows with a Notre Dame theme. Behind the glass partition is the room where Dick's first layout was, and that area still contains a 3-level layout and a handsome suspension bridge he made himself. Most of the trains he runs in both rooms are current Lionel.
Anything that I purchase, I do not run it immediately. I leave it in the box for several months, and I see, you know, what the comparative value. If the piece goes up in value, I probably will not run it, because naturally it's going to be worth more money if it's new in the box than if it's been operated. Well, in 1941, I had my first Lionel train, which was a small set, a 1666 steam engine, and just 2 cars and a caboose. 5 years later, I got my second train, which was a 726 steam engine, a little longer train, and I'm just happy that I retained and held on to those trains until I got interested in the collection again.
Brown once flirted with the idea of expanding his train operations to an adjoining room, but his wife, although she likes trains, drew the line.
That was the ultimatum. She said if I tried to leave this room and take over the big room, that we might have a serious marital problem at that time.
Back in 1979, when Dick started building his layout, his son Tom was only 8 years old.
And we spent a lot of time working on the trains together, operating them together, until he was approximately 13 or 14, and then he realized there were girls, and that was the end of his times in the train room.
But Dick Brown remains involved, and he gets others involved too.
Well, the rule is if you come in my house, you know, then you cannot leave until you have seen the trains. My greatest joy, truly, is to have people come and observe the layout.
John Stanley's layout is a classic case of layout sprawl. It started small and then just kind of kept on growing. If blame must be placed, the primary suspect has to be Don Shaw, owner of the Train Station Train Store in Mountain Lakes, New Jersey. Things started innocently enough. It was Christmas 1985.
I decided I wanted a Lionel train to run around my Christmas tree. So I went down to see Don Shaw at Mountain Lakes train station, and he ended up selling me an Erie Lackawanna freight set. and it never got around the Christmas tree. I had a pool table in this room, which I ended up putting a piece of plywood on, and it has grown from there. When I left Don Shaw, he looked at me with a twinkle in his eye, and he said, "You'll be back." And before Christmas season was over, I was back for more track, another engine, and I had put a dog leg on the table from off the pool table, and it has grown from there.
Grown from there doesn't quite tell the story. The layout, a solid rectangle, almost fills the 24 by 30 foot room.
The layout is now so large that I can't get conveniently into the center to make any arrangement changes or dust or anything. It was the last edition that did it.
In the beginning, John was eager to get the trains running. He put indoor-outdoor carpeting over the 3/4 inch plywood surface and began laying track.
When I first designed the layout or started to put the layout together, I wasn't interested in scenery at all. I just would like to see how many trains I could get operating on a small area. And now scenery, I guess, is taken a major part of the layout.
John was not interested in making plans either.
The method I used here is just trial and error, laying stuff down and see how it works, and I get a lot of enjoyment out of the trial and error method. It's just fun to come down here and shut everything away and little by little create something. I enjoyed running trains very close to each other as they pass. So it was trial and error to how close I could put the track together as one train would pass another to make a realistic appearance. It's more of a toy train operation rather than a scale appearing railroad. I can run approximately 15 trains at one time, but they're all on individual loops. I don't have any blocks or anything like that on the layout. It's just little loops here and larger loops. And
the outer loops are 072, the inner loops 054.
And I'd even have some 027 when it's really tight inside.
John has only one wire connecting the transformer to the various loops. On the largest loop, this causes a problem.
Well, I have to give it full throttle at the other end to keep it running. So it would be a big advantage if I had feeder hookups here and there around the track. And I'm sure I'm going to have to do that next time I do this because it's going to be an even larger distance around.
The power is supplied by 8 ZWs, 2 at each corner. The large loops are controlled in one corner, while the transformers in the other corners operate the trains close by. When friends come over, all the corners are busy. Stanley, 51, a roofing and siding contractor, has an enduring affection for the Erie-Lackawanna Railroad.
Erie-Lackawanna trains are my favorites, and I run those primarily, particularly Erie-Lackawanna and Erie diesels. This area that we live in is Erie-Lackawanna and Lackawanna country, and that's I grew up seeing the trains run through the town, and I enjoy seeing them now in the layout.
All the engines and rolling stock are Erie-Lackawanna. Another favorite, the Ford automobile, is also well represented. There's a Ford factory, a Ford dealership, and over 100 Lionel automobile cars. The Ford plant is a Buildings Unlimited Lionel factory kit, which John transformed into a Ford automobile plant.
Well, I'm also a collector of 1956 Fords, and I'm a big Ford fan. In my business, I have a lot of Ford vehicles, so I really like Ford automobiles. I have 13 1956 Fords, pretty much in a good show condition. The Crown Victoria basically is the nicest car. The Crown Victoria has a stainless steel band over the top of the roof, and it's a very desirable collector's car.
The Lionel automobile